Today we're in the mountains between San Diego and Imperial County, looking for some ruins and an old wagon road that dates back to the 1860s. Hey everyone, welcome to Sidetrack Adventures. This is Steve. Right now I'm at the Desert View Tower in the mountains between San Diego and Imperial County. And we've done several videos on the Desert View Tower area before, and the tower is not why we're out here today. The reason we're out here today is because of this historical marker. So I know the sign's a little bit difficult to read on the camera, but about a mile north of here was this Mountain Springs station site, which is where a toll road for wagons coming up the mountains was located at. There's still a Mountain Springs, there's an exit off Interstate 8 for it, but if you look at the bottom of the plaque, it says the older stone house ruins are inaccessible. Well, that's what we're going to try to find today. So before we head down to Mountain Springs Station, let's head to the top of the tower and do a bit of reconnaissance. We can't really see what we're looking for from up here, but right below us is a piece of old Highway 80, and then off in the distance you can kind of make out the old wagon road, and that's pretty much where we're headed. So I'm coming down the mountain on an old wagon road, and actually this is the original old wagon road, but I'll get to the history of the roads in just a minute. But I've arrived at the spring Mountain Springs is named for. You can see everything's a lot greener in this area. There's a palm tree in front of us, and that's Interstate 8, where you see all the cars going by. We are right next to the interstate right now, but there's no way to access this from the interstate, unless of course you want to park on the side of the interstate and jump a barbed wire fence. But let's take a look at the spring itself. And I'm being really careful for snakes and other wild animals around here. But here we go. Here is the mountain spring Mountain Springs is named for. And you can see at some point they built a structure around it to kind of capture the water. But it still stays green down through this valley and onto the other side of the freeway. So here's a look at the spring from another angle. And there's the wagon road coming down right next to it. So this was an important water source for early travelers. And of course, that's why they built a store and everything here as well, which we're gonna head down and see if we can find the ruins for that. So we've got about 100 feet or so downhill from the spring, and I know as we get closer to the freeway noise gets a little bit louder, so I apologize if this gets hard to hear. But you can see the wagon road down here has been built up a little bit more. There's rocks piled along the side of it to stabilize it, and we could kind of see the outlines of some walls down here. So let's take a closer look. I think we found what we're looking for. So we've made it down to the ruins of what I believe is the old building. But if you look around this area, there's actually several different types of structures. I'm not sure how well it comes out on the camera, but if you can see these walls off in the distance, and we'll go take a closer look at them as well. These are sheep pens, and you can see the road behind it. That's not the road that we came down on. So I guess now's probably a good time to talk about the history of Mountain Springs Station. By the mid-1800s, there was a saying that only the courageous or the desperate attempt to cross the mountains between San Diego and the Colorado River. Much to the detriment of the potential growth of the city of San Diego, the mountains to the east were considered impassable. Looking at a map of wagon routes in California in 1850, the only way to get to San Diego from the east was by taking a wide turn to the north and then cutting back to the south.
If a direct route could be found, up to 80 miles of travel could be saved, reducing travel from the east by about 4 days. In 1851, an Army officer named Nathaniel Lyons set out from San Diego and discovered a trail down the mountains into the desert below. And by discovered, I mean Native Americans who were long aware of the trail told him about it. The trail came down the mountain at Mountain Springs. Lyons reported that the trail is sufficient for mules, but would take some labor to be suitable for wagons. About 6,000 sheep, driven by a party of Mexicans from Yuma to Los Angeles, used the new route within 5 weeks of Lyons' report. The route became popular for sheepherders in the 1850s, and the rock corrals still here today were built at that time. The first wheeled travel over the new route was in 1856, when a battery of artillery traveled from San Diego to Fort Yuma. The trail was so steep that the Army had to cut down oak trees and drag them behind the wagons as an anchor to slow their descent down the mountain. The path they took became the first wagon road to Mountain Springs. The original wagon road was very steep. It climbed over 800 feet of elevation in less than a mile and had an average grade of 18.3%, with some sections over 30%. By comparison, the modern Interstate 8 that travels through here today has a grade of about 6%. The tough road led to an opportunity for Peter Larkin and Joe Stancliffe. In 1863, the pair built a stone house at Mountain Springs to sell supplies to travelers and rented a team of oxen to help pull wagons up the mountain. Travel through the area was still rough though, and by the late 1860s, the demand for a new road through the mountains was growing. In 1870, the San Diego Fort Yuma Turnpike Company purchased Larkin's holdings and was awarded the rights to establish a toll road and station at this location. A new, far less steep and easier to travel road was built up the mountain at a cost of about $3,000 to $4,000. The descent to Mountain Springs now took about 20 minutes, when it used to take almost a whole day because of the road's steepness. There was a regular stagecoach line from San Diego to Yuma, Arizona through most of the 1870s. But in 1877, the railroad line was completed between Yuma and Los Angeles, and it became much faster to take the train to reach San Diego. Regular stagecoach travel through Mountain Springs ended. The road would see much less use for several decades, until the automobile came along. If the wagon roads through the mountains were rough on wagons, they were worse on cars. A trip report in 1910 said it took 2 days to go from Jacumba down into the desert using the wagon road, a trip of about 17 miles. Public pressure to build a real auto road through the mountains increased, and the construction of one began in late 1911 or early 1912. The auto road bypassed the mountain section of the old stage road, instead taking a different route to get to Mountain Springs. The auto road officially opened in April 1913 and would eventually become part of Highway 80. While a service station was built in Mountain Springs, it was on the opposite side of the highway. The highway construction, and later the interstate that replaced it, cut off access to this area where the ruins of the original Mountain Springs station lie. Now the only way to legally access it is the same way those courageous and desperate travelers in the 1800s would have. The old wagon roads down the mountain.
Let's take a closer look at the ruins. And the first thing we want to do is look out for any snakes. Because the last thing I want to do is get down there and get bit by a snake and have to go back up this hill. And this was built to last. I'm seeing a lot of old metal and old cans laying around. It looks like these sheep pens would have taken a ton of work to make. Supposedly they were built in order to protect the sheep from coyotes. Now, I've never done any sheep herding and I'm not a sheep herding expert, but I'm pretty sure coyotes could jump over these walls pretty easily, so I'm not sure how effective it was at protecting anything from coyotes, but that's what these were built for. I imagine they were probably a little bit higher in the 1860s, but still pretty impressive that these were built out here.
I had mentioned there's a barbed wire fence on the side of the freeway. It looks like a portion of it's been knocked down for off-road vehicles to get through, though I'm not sure how they get over the guardrail onto the interstate.
The old trail going up the side of the mountain. And the new trail. So that's our look at the supposedly inaccessible Mountain Spring Station. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.